You know, we usually think of the human body as a collection of separate parts. The bones do their thing, the kidneys do theirs, the liver handles its own business. But what happens when just one system trips up? Does it fail alone, or does it drag the whole body down with it? Let's unravel a medical mystery today, and honestly, it's a bit terrifying to see exactly how a single failure triggers a catastrophic systemic collapse.
Hey everybody, Janet here. Before we start the case, we just wanted to remind you guys to like and subscribe, as well as leave recommendations for what topics we should make videos on next. Okay, that's it. Bye.
So our case kicks off in the emergency department with a 58-year-old guy. He comes in after what seems like a totally minor slip and fall on his kitchen floor. He's complaining of severe right forearm pain, and an x-ray confirms a broken wrist, a distal radius fracture. But one look at him and you immediately know something else is very wrong. His arms and legs are thin, but his abdomen is severely distended. It's firm, and there's this weird wave-like motion when you press on it. Plus, he's covered in extensive, extremely tender bruises.
Right, so we run his vitals in labs, and wow, they reveal a body that is absolutely under siege. His HbA1c is at 9.1%, which means his type 2 diabetes is wildly unmanaged. His GFR, that's his kidney filtration rate, is sitting dangerously low at 52, putting him squarely in stage 3A chronic kidney disease. And pointing to decades of heavy drinking, we're talking up to a 750 milliliter bottle of vodka a day, his liver enzymes confirm he has cirrhosis. We are looking at a machine that is deeply, deeply compromised.
Okay, so here's the first real mystery we need to solve. Why on earth did a simple stumble on a flat kitchen floor snap his wrist? I mean, a healthy 58-year-old skeleton should definitely handle a minor trip. Well, to figure this out, we actually have to look past the bones entirely and look directly at his failing kidneys. Under normal circumstances, your kidneys are vital for conserving calcium and making calcitriol. That's an active form of vitamin D that helps your gut absorb calcium. But because our patient's kidneys are failing in stage 3A disease, they've basically stopped producing enough calcitriol. The result? His blood calcium levels just absolutely plummet, which forces his whole system into a massive scramble just to keep his heart beating and his nerves firing.
So to compensate for this severe calcium shortage, the parathyroid gland kicks into overdrive. It pumps out parathyroid hormone, which essentially sends a 911 call to cells called osteoclasts. And what do? They literally start breaking down his bone matrix to release stored calcium right back into the blood. Think about that for a second. His body is literally cannibalizing its own structural foundation just to keep his blood chemistry viable. His bone density severely drops, leaving his skeleton dangerously brittle. And that is exactly why a simple slip broke his wrist. The failing kidneys quite literally took down the skeleton. Talk about a domino effect.
All right, next up, we need to talk about his high blood pressure, because this introduces a massive clash between his organs. Imagine it like a communication breakdown between local branch management and corporate headquarters. Usually, kidneys have an intrinsic regulation system. They act like local managers trying to keep the filtration rate steady. But when things go haywire system-wide, extrinsic regulation steps in. That's corporate headquarters using hormones and nerves to manage overall blood pressure. Because our patient's kidneys are so damaged, they're completely misreading the room. They mistakenly sense they aren't getting enough blood flow.
And because they sense this drop in blood flow, these damaged kidneys absolutely panic. They think the whole body is dehydrating or bleeding out. So they pull the fire alarm. In human physiology, that fire alarm is the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, or RAS.
Now watch how fast his cascading disaster builds. First, the kidney dumps the enzyme renin. That sets off a rapid-fire chain reaction with the liver and lungs to produce angiotensin II, which violently constricts his blood vessels. Then aldosterone is released from the adrenal gland, forcing his body to hoard water and salt. This whole hormonal pathway is artificially and aggressively cranking up his blood pressure. His kidneys are basically forcing more blood through their own failing filters, but to do it, they are putting an insane strain on his entire cardiovascular system.
So his kidneys are fracturing his bones and straining his heart, but what about those extensive bruises? Why is a minor fall causing such massive bruising on his arms and legs? It means his blood isn't behaving normally. And to understand why, we need to quickly look at hemostasis. That's the vital process where platelets and plasma proteins team up to stop bleeding when a vessel breaks.
A healthy body relies on this beautiful, highly coordinated dance to stop bleeding. Platelets rush in first, and then a protein called fibrinogen transforms into a tough fibrin mesh to lock the clot in place. On top of that, you have another plasma protein called albumin circulating around. Albumin is crucial because it provides oncotic pressure, which is just a fancy way of saying it acts like a sponge, keeping fluid inside your blood vessels so it doesn't leak into your tissues. But here's the catch. Almost all of these essential proteins, they are made in the liver.
And that brings us to the real gut punch of this case. Our patient's liver is completely ravaged by cirrhosis from decades of drinking. The liver is the body's protein factory, and right now, the factory is closed. It's not making fibrinogen, which explains the massive bruising and why he can't stop bleeding, and it's not making albumin, which destroys his blood's sponge-like oncotic pressure. Without that pressure, fluid literally just leaks out of his vessels and pools in his abdominal cavity. That right there is exactly why his belly was severely distended with that wave-like motion, a very dangerous condition known as ascites.
So, the interconnected web is straining hard. But we do what we can. We cast the broken arm, get him on meds for his blood pressure and diabetes, tell him he absolutely must stop drinking, and discharge him. Let's track the timeline. He stays sober for about 2 months. The dominoes are temporarily paused, but then human behavior tips them right back over. He relapses. He starts drinking heavy again, and just to save a few bucks, he rations his diabetes meds. Fast forward to 6 months after that first visit, and the dominoes finally crash. He gets rushed back to the emergency department, vomiting bright red blood.
This is a massive code red emergency. Remember all those dominoes we just tracked? They're all hitting at once. The failing kidneys drove his blood pressure sky high. At the exact same time, the scarred, rock-hard liver created a huge roadblock for that high-pressure blood, forcing it to reroute into tiny, delicate veins in his esophagus. Those veins ballooned out under the pressure and ruptured. And because that same failing liver isn't making fibrinogen, his blood physically cannot clot. The systems haven't just failed, they have literally weaponized against each other. He is rapidly bleeding out internally.
The medical team jumps in, ordering massive blood transfusions and an emergency procedure to band the bleeding veins. But there's another looming threat. Because his abdomen is still completely full of that leaked ascites fluid, he is a sitting duck for secondary, opportunistic infections. Normally, his early immune responders would detect pathogens and trigger local inflammation and a fever. But his body is just totally exhausted, and his physical skin and mucosal barriers are completely shot.
Knowing his immune defenses are basically running on empty, the specialist strongly recommends prophylactic antibiotics. It's almost inevitable he'll get a life-threatening abdominal infection otherwise. But, tragically, the patient declines the medication. Despite the absolute physiological crisis cascading through his body, the final barrier to saving him ends up being a failure of the behavioral system. It was his own choice.
We started today with a simple slip on a kitchen floor and a broken wrist. But by pulling on that one single thread, we found a failing kidney that cannibalized its own skeleton, a panicked hormone system that weaponized the patient's blood pressure, and a scarred liver that refused to clot his blood while filling his belly with fluid. This case really leaves us with a profound realization, doesn't it? Human physiology is not just a bunch of isolated parts. It is a fragile, deeply interconnected web. So the question I'll leave you with is this. When one foundational system in your body begins to fail, how long can the rest of the web hold out before the final domino falls? Thanks for exploring this one with me.